Hey everybody, how's everybody doing? Welcome to Magnificent Monday. This is your brother, Dr. David, and today is a magnificent day. As you all know, every Monday I come on to really talk about how magnificent Monday is. Monday is the day that starts the new week. Monday is the day where you get through the weekend, you rest from work on Friday, you enjoy your family on Saturday, you worship on Sunday, and now here comes Monday. And so many people feel that Monday is a dreadful day. It's the beginning of the week. But I believe that Monday is magnificent because it gives you an opportunity to set the pace for what you're getting ready to do this week. And so I'm here. And as you all know, we are coming off of a wonderful weekend. So first, I want to start with saying happy Father's Day or happy belated Father's Day to all the dads. Your role is a tremendous role. And I pray that, your family took care of you yesterday, let you know that you are a great dad. I'm sure that for some, Father's Day may be just a little bit sad because you may not have your father around. You may not have the person who brought you into this world. And I didn't have my father with me on yesterday. And so, but I do want to honor him today, although he's up in heaven resting and doing his thing up there. But I am a dad, and I had an opportunity on yesterday to be with my children, my son and my daughter and my son's family. And so Father's Day was great for me. So again, happy Father's Day to all the dads. Now, also, I want to talk about something that happened over this weekend. It started on Friday, and I want to acknowledge this holiday. And it was called Juneteenth. Right? Everybody knows Juneteenth, which is June the 19th, when in 1865, the last of the, those who were enslaved, they were emancipated and they were notified by the U.S. Troops that they were free, that they were no longer enslaved. Now, I just wanted to take a few minutes and kind of tie some loose ends. And I'm sure you have received many a story. Yes. You've received many a story on Juneteenth about its history, about its origin. And I just want to try to do just my little bit of it because I think it's a phenomenal story. About how African Americans who were enslaved in America on June the 19th in Galveston, Texas, those who had never heard of the Emancipation Proclamation for more than 2.5 years were now notified by the U.S. government that they were free from slavery. All right. So let's just kind of talk about some facts. All right. So we all know about the Emancipation Proclamation. We know Abraham Lincoln in the fall of 1862, he was the president, and he wanted to free the slaves. But now watch this, and I need you to hear this. He wanted to free the slaves not in the United States of America, but those slaves who were in the Confederate States. You remember that during that time, it was the Civil War, and the North was fighting against the South. It was the Confederate States who had, I think the word is succeeded. Is that the right word? From the United States, and they formed their own government. There was a civil war between the North and the South. And in 1862, President Abraham Lincoln wrote what is called an executive order. Now, many of you know what an executive order is because it's very current today. It's where the President of the United States has the authority to enact not a law, but to enact maybe an ordinance, to give direction, and where if he signs his executive order, a particular process or ordinance can go into effect. So when people say that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, that's partially true. He did not free all the slaves in the United States. He did not free the slaves that were on the border. We call them border states of the Confederate States. There was about 12 Confederate states. Primarily, they were in the South. And so what Lincoln did was he freed all the slaves that were in the Confederate states, those states that were fighting against the Union, fighting against Abraham Lincoln, General Grant, and all those who were fighting for the North. Abraham Lincoln freed those slaves. Now, one reason why he did that was because he knew that if he would free the slaves in the Confederate states, they would then join up with the northern states, and they would help fight against the Confederate states. And that's exactly what happened. So what did Abraham Lincoln do? He had this executive order that on January 1st, 1863, all slaves in Confederate states would be free. Now, let me just add something here, because I know many of you who are watching this, you have a church background. You've been going to church probably all of your life. And every New Year's Eve, we have this celebration called New Year's Eve service, right? Come to church, you pray. Mostly we pray for the new year to be phenomenal. We come to God. We want to bring in the new year. The old year is going out. And we just want to do things right, because they say that how you bring in the new year is how the year would go. So we would gather every New Year's Eve looking for the coming of the new year. Well, the watch night service was really housed in the Emancipation Proclamation. Because when Abraham Lincoln, late fall 1862, said that beginning January 1st, 1863, that the slaves in the Confederate States would be set free, what those who were churchgoers, what they did was that night, prior to midnight, 1862 going to 1863, they gathered at the church. They prayed, because what they were anticipating was that at midnight they would be set free. They would be emancipated. So the origin of watch night was really the night of when enslaved Africans in the southern states, Confederate states, were going to be set free by Abraham Lincoln. They gathered together that night praying, waiting for 12 o'clock midnight, because they knew that that they would be set free by the executive order. And so that's really how watch night began. And so we've been doing watch night over the years, but the origin of it was that night where the enslaved Africans in the Confederate States were praying and looking and waiting for 12 o'clock because they would be free. So that's just a little bit of history about a watch night. But so what happened was, of course, we know the Civil War was fought, and then around 1865, Civil War's over, the North wins. But the story or the information of the Emancipation Proclamation for 2.5 years did not reach all of the slaves. And of course, it did not reach those who were in Galveston, Texas. And so on that day, June 19th, 1865, when the troops came in, they made the announcement that all people of African descent were now free. So June 19th became this history for Black people and really people across the nation to celebrate that all were made free in the Confederate States. Now, the 13th Amendment was the actual law that made all slaves free, but the 13th Amendment was not ratified until December of 1865. So again, what Abraham Lincoln did was he freed the slaves in the Confederate States, but it took 2.5 years for those who were in Galveston, Texas, to finally hear that message. And so on that day, they were then officially notified that they were free like everyone else in the southern states, and now they could go about their business. So Juneteenth is a great day. It's a historical day. But I was listening to a program the other day between, I'm trying to think of, it was Dr. Greg Carr, who is a professor at Howard University, and Karen Hunter. If some of you may know her name, she's on Sirius Radio. Karen Hunter. So the conversation had to do with, even though they were talking about Juneteenth, Dr. Carr brought out something I thought was very intriguing to hear and very impactful. So we're celebrating Juneteenth, but Juneteenth was not the day of freedom for all Africans. Okay? Now, watch this. He said it was not the day of freedom for all Africans, because what happened was many others who were set free had alternate days as to when their holiday was, their celebration was. And the reason is because they understood that the day you became free was the day that you were notified of your freedom. All right? So those who were celebrating Juneteenth was because that's when they were notified. But some people celebrated other days, because that was the day that they received the notification that they were free. Also, some people celebrate January the 1st as the day of their holiday of being emancipated, because that was the day that they were notified. And of course, those who were who got the notice and who celebrated on January the 1st, 1863, some of them have said that's our day. So Juneteenth, or June 19th, according to this discussion, even though it is going to be a national holiday, we hope and pray, it was not the day that everyone actually celebrated. As a matter of fact, I didn't even know about Juneteenth until I got into my 40s, because when you lived up in the North, it was not conversations about it, not discussions about it. But over time, it became more notified. We received more information about it, and now hopefully it's national, and hopefully it'll go global. And that's the day that we're going to focus on. But he was saying that other people celebrate other days, depending on your state, depending on when they were notified, as to when they celebrate the holiday or celebrate their emancipation. Also, I want to bring out another point, and I thought this was really phenomenal. The Emancipation Proclamation was really something that was written on paper. Okay, it was something that told people that Abraham Lincoln had set this executive order and they were free. But really, the paper wasn't what really freed them, according to Dr. Carr. It was really their actions to fight for their freedom. Come on, somebody. Because, see, sometimes a person can tell you something. They can tell you that this belongs to you. They can tell you that this is yours, or you might even see it written on a piece of paper. But in fact, what causes a person to be free is what they do on their own behalf. And so what Dr. Carr was saying was that when the slaves were set free, remember, the Civil War was not over in January the 1st, 1863. So when they were then set free by the executive order, and then those slaves joined up with Abraham Lincoln, they then became a part of fighting for the freedom. Come on, somebody. They joined in the fight for freedom. And so when I heard that really talked about how today that even though laws may say that you're free, even though there is a 13th Amendment, there's a 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. And, we call those the Black Amendments, the African American Amendments, because the 13th Amendment had to do with no man shall be enslaved. And of course, they put a parenthetical clause in there, except if you get convicted of a crime. That's the 13th Amendment. Then the 14th Amendment was about citizenship and equal access and due process that Africans, up until I think it may have been about 1867, where Africans, even if you were born in this country, you were still not considered a citizen until the 14th Amendment, where you got citizenship because you were born here. And then there was the 15th Amendment. The 15th Amendment allowed black men to go to the polls and to be able to vote. So the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, we consider those the black amendments, the black codes, because they were referencing primarily Africans who were living in America during that time, those that were in slavery, those that were not considered citizens, and black males who could not vote. And so those three amendments were primary towards people of color. But in spite of the amendments, you can still be in captivity, because captivity or freedom is really something you have to fight for. Freedom is not going to just be, even if, like I say, even if it's on the paper, even if it's in the laws, you can still be enslaved. You can be enslaved by first of all, you can be enslaved in your mind. Because so many of us have an enslaved mind. And what does that mean? That means you don't think well of yourself. You don't have self-esteem. You think of yourself as being less than someone else. No, you have to free your mind. And the day that you free your mind is really the day that you will be free. I wish I could get a witness on that one. That's the day that you free, when your mind is free. Because if your mind is in captivity, you're in captivity. You don't have to be behind prison bars to be in prison. You can be sitting in your house and be in prison. You can be on your job and be in prison. So freedom comes from allowing yourself to be free in your mind. And then when you're free in your mind, then you will fight against every evil force that's trying to continue to enslave you. Oh yeah, I don't care how many laws that says we're free, unless you stand up for your rights, unless you get out and vote, unless you refuse to be enslaved and refuse to be subjugated and refuse to be oppressed by systems and by people. You have to stand up. And it doesn't matter. And of course, primarily it's primarily targeted at, people of color and other minorities. But you have to push past oppression. You have to push past systems of racism. You have to push past privileges that others may have. You have to demand your rights. You have to demand your freedom. You have to demand what's yours. And then you have to function as a free man and as a free person. And, that was one of the strengths of Wall Street. And I'm talking about the Black Wall Street. That community that was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And in late May, early June of, I think it would be 1921, because they just celebrated the 99th year of the destruction of Black Wall Street in Tulsa. I think the name of the community was called the Greenwood community. But they were people that, even though they were of African descent, they were of African ancestry, they were not only free by the paper, by the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, but they were also free in their minds. They knew that they were just as intelligent, just as skillful, just as productive as any other race, any other culture. They were bankers, they were lawyers, they were real estate agents, they were butchers, they were bakers, they were entrepreneurs, they were homeowners, they were business professionals. They were just like everyone else. And the reason why is because they had a free mind. When your mind is free, you can become anything you want to be. When your mind is free, you can accomplish any goal that you want to accomplish. But you have to allow your mind to be free, and you cannot allow people to put you back into captivity. And I think that this weekend that we just celebrated, the Juneteenth, the primary purpose of it is it talks about freedom. It talks about being free to be yourself, being free to accomplish the goal that's in your heart and in your mind, being free to raise your family, to live with purpose and destiny, being free to serve God, being free to be an American. I know sometimes as African Americans, as black people, we do have problems with some of the things that goes on in America. I'm going to say America is a great country in the context of its ideals, meaning all men are created equal, meaning we all have the right to liberty and justice and freedom. Those are the ideals of America. It's just that we all have to live up to those ideals. I know some of our founding fathers, even though they took the time to write those words, and they are true words because they were, they came from England and other places where they did not have the freedom, so they stood against government. And they talked about their freedoms, and all those things were great. They were great ideals. They did not totally enact them from their own behavior because there was a culture that they were part of, and that culture was to oppress Africans, even though the ideal said all men are free. And so today we're going to hold up the American ideals to say that we're free and we're equal and we're just like you, and we have the same rights as you, the rights to live here, the rights to raise a family, the right to own a business, to the right to be a man, the right to be a woman, and I'm going to say this too, and the right to breathe. We have that right because we are all Americans. So as we celebrate this, we close out this Juneteenth weekend. It's a weekend of freedom. It's a weekend of celebration. And we need to go forward. Yes, let's make it a holiday. Let's get it on the calendar. Let's celebrate it. But let's celebrate people. Let's eliminate the division. Let's eliminate privilege and underclass and poverty. Let's work on that. So that way we can all be Americans. Let's stop being divisive. Let's have conversations. And I think that when we can do those things, America can become great. But we have to live up to the ideals. We have to make sure God has his place in our lives. God can't be somewhere off in the distant future or in the distance somewhere. No, God has to be right there. And I believe that when we do these things, we can make things a lot better. So I just wanted to share my thoughts with you today. And I want to thank you for joining me here on Magnificent Monday. And I want you to have a magnificent day. I want you to do something great. I want you to know that you are the best that God has made you. That's who I'm talking to. You are God's best. And you can be whatever you want to be if you put your mind to it. Scripture says, as a man thinketh, so is he. And through Christ, I'm able to do anything because greater is he that's in me than he that's in the world. This is your brother David. God bless you and have a magnificent day.